Hi guys, this is the first recording Schmooze, so we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if we'll post it depending on how the class goes. All right, Ellie, you were telling us.
Okay, so this guy, Rabbi Menachem Mendel from Vitebsk, I
Vitebsk.
think he was a student of the Maggid Mezrich, and he decided to go to Israel, and he had like a student, his name was Rabbi Pesach, and he was very close to him, and then since he went to Israel, he was looking for, I guess, for a new rabbi, and he heard about, he was a student also, he was a friend also of the Alter Rebbe. And then when Chabad became famous and the Alter Rebbe made it famous, he became very close to Chabad, very close to the Alter Rebbe. And one time on Isur Chag, on Sukkot, the Russian army, the Russian government, I don't know, they sent the soldiers to pick up the Alter Rebbe. So they came with like a carriage, and they took him, and he was very, very upset about it. He couldn't really function. He fainted, and he fainted in the street. And one guy, a Jewish guy, came and said that tell him that he's okay, like give him like a white light. That way maybe you wake up and not feel so bad about what happened to the Alter Rebbe. So anyway, he woke up and he realized it was a lie. He fainted again, and then he decided to go back to his city, Watbask. I think that's where somewhere in Russia. So what happened was that they decided to read Tehillim every day and fast until the rabbi, the Alter Rebbe would be released from jail. So one time he got really tired, and he had a dream about his Rebbe, that Rabbi Menachem Mendel from Rosbach. He already passed away, and he had a dream about him. So he saw him. He saw like a big light coming ahead of him, and he felt embarrassed because he saw his old Rebbe, and he felt kind of like embarrassed because he became like a Chassid of the Alter Rebbe. So he told him, the rabbi told him, don't worry, I understand where you're coming from. It's okay. I just want to let you know what happened in heaven. It was like about Yutet Kislev already. I'll tell you what happened. It was all it was like the Ilula of from the Maggid of Mezrich, and everybody came. All the tzaddikim came in Gan Eden to listen to his Torah. On his right was a Baal Shem Tov, and on his left was the Ari Kadosh, and he said some beautiful Divrei Torah. When he finished, he started to cry and said, "Please save my Zdolmina." That was a nickname, I think, for the Alter Rebbe. Please save him because he's in jail, and I need someone to pray for him that he should be saved and get out. So all of a sudden they hear like a big noise, like tons of angels coming with a big tzaddik, none other than Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So he sat down, and the top of everybody like stood up, gave him a lot of respect. Everybody was quiet. He stood up, he created the Beit Din, and he declared in the Shemaim that today the Alter Rebbe will be released. So he got up from the dream, he told everybody, and 1 week later, somebody came with a horse and told everybody the Alter Rebbe is. So that's how, I send you the whole link. You can read it because you told me a long time ago. I thought I was going to look for it, and I happened to speak to one of the Chabad rabbis, and he sent it to me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Shkoch, Ellie. Well, it's an appropriate time to say such a story because we're in Sfirat HaOmer, and that's the time we have the celebration of Rashbi's Yortzeit on Lag Bomer. So
Right.
the whole Omer is connected to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, and so it's an auspicious day. And you know what? May he daven for all of us for all the things that Klal Yisrael. We're in difficult times now that he should be poil. You mentioned Rashbi, so I'll just say a quick story that I can never remember where I heard the Rebbe say the story. The Rebbe told the story. I think we told it, but when you mention a tzaddik, it's always good to continue mentioning a tzaddik. And when just by mentioning a tzaddik, especially a tzaddik like Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, it's poil Yeshuas. It affects salvation for those who are telling the story and those who are listening to the story. So it says, a quick story is short, that the Rashbi, there was a couple who we told the story, but there was a couple who couldn't have children, and so they went to Rashbi for a blessing for children, and so I think he gave them a blessing, but finally they weren't having children, so they came to the Rashbi and they said that they both decided equally that the best thing for them to do is to get divorced and go their own way, and maybe each of them with another spouse would find the opportunity to have children. So the Rashbi said, "Listen, I just want to say a suggestion that just like you guys, you're not fighting, you don't like each other, you like each other, you just don't, you want to have children. So I suggest that just like you had a big wedding when you got together and a big party, I suggest you make a big party and get on a separation, do a divorce party, because you're not getting divorced. You don't hate each other. You love each other. You can't have children. So hey Jake, so they had a. So they had a sorry, Aaron, just to put you over. So they had a big party, divorce party, and the husband was saying so much l'chaim. Because he was very sad that he's getting divorced. So he's saying so much l'chaim that at the end he was mamish after a lot of l'chaim. And he said to his wife, wife, we're getting divorced, but I want to tell you, he was a wealthy man. You could take whatever you want from the house. Anything you want from the house, you could take. And he then the next morning he wakes up. He fell asleep. The next morning he wakes up and he sees he's in his father-in-law's house. He's not sure how he ended up in his father-in-law's house. So, he's kind of feeling a little awkward, and he comes downstairs and he says, what's going on? So she said, well, you told me I could take whatever I want. And when you fell asleep, I told the servant to take you. So I want you. And so they didn't know what to do because, they didn't really want to get separated, but they didn't have children. So they went back to Reb Shimon bar Yochai. And Reb Shimon bar Yochai said he blessed him with children. He said, you're going to have children. And they ended up having children. And the Gemara finishes off and says that just like Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem blesses and gives women that they should open up, the barren woman should be able to have children, so too that's the power of Rashbi. So the Rebbe tells the story, and it's an amazing story. There's so many lessons one can learn from the story, but once we're mentioning Reb Shimon bar Yochai, we'll mention this story also. Well, either way, guys, thank you, Eli, for your story, and welcome everyone back from after the Passover holiday, Pesach. It's good to see you guys again. The rest of the Chevra, I'm sure, will join soon. So this week's Parsha is Kedoshim. It's a very holy Parsha. It's a Parsha about being holy, and it's also the Parsha Shabbos. The Shabbos with the first Shabbos of Iyar, and we're getting ready soon for Rosh Chodesh is tomorrow, and also Beis Iyar, which is a big holiday by Chabad. The Chatchila Rebbe, the idea that we just got to jump over things. So that's just my opening. If anyone wants to start with their questions, I'm sure.
Yeah, what about Passover Sheni? Can you give us some insight on it? Because we eat some matzah, but more than that.
But we're going to learn in a few weeks. We're going to learn in a few weeks about Passover Sheni. That Passover Sheni, the second Passover, was for those who couldn't make it for the first Passover. It says what happened. Technically there's a little bit of difficulty of the situation, but basically. There were people that became impure in the desert when they did the second temple. We're not sure who they were. Some opinions is that they were the cousins of Moshe who pulled out the two dead sons of Aaron that we learned about in last week's parsha. So they had to pull them out. When they pulled them out, they became impure, and they weren't able to be part of the sacrifice of the Pesach. So they wanted a chance to sacrifice. So Hashem said to Moshe from then on that whenever a person can't come for the Passover, because it's not by choice, but if you're far away or you're impure, so then you could do the second. You could do the second Passover. But in Chabad, the Frierdiker Rebbe said the message is that in life, the message for today, for 5,784, 2024, the message of Pesach Sheni is that a person sometimes feels in their own life think that life passed me by. It's too late. I was younger once and I could have made better choices in my life. But now we're in our mid ages and it's too late. So Pesach Sheni is the message. It's never too late. In Yiddish, it says, "Es kemol is nishdakein farfallen." There's never a situation where you say, "Whatever, the moment's passed," and my situation is the way it is. So that's the message of Pesach Sheni.
Rabbi, go ahead, Eli. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Is that include if I miss the Tikkun Pesach, Shvi Shel Pesach? I can say it on Pesach Sheni, because I always say Tikkun Shavuot. I never know about that. I never stay in shul that late to say the Shvi Shel Pesach Tikkun.
That's a very, very good question, because we don't have 7 days. We don't celebrate specifically the splitting of the Red Sea. There's a lot of different laws that for instance, we don't clean our house for chametz. Today. We celebrate it in a physical way by just eating matzah, but the Rebbe spoke, actually. I'm trying to find the sikha because I'm trying to listen to it again. The Rebbe spoke that there was an idea that they should make it for 7 days of Pesach Sheni, after Pesach Sheni. So it's always a good time to say Tikkun Shavuot. Tikkun Shvisha Pesach. It's the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe would say Tikkun on Shavuos a whole summer. He would catch up. So if you could catch up on Shavuos, I'm sure you could catch up on Shvisha Pesach.
So I can say it on Shvuot, on Tikkun Leil Shavuot, I can add the Tikkun
well,
Shvisha Pesach?
That Tikkun Leil Shavuos is very long. Why would you wait to add? If you want to say it, say a little bit.
All right, okay. All right,
So
Jake.
Rabbi,
Go ahead.
questions on the Seder. First on the plague where the firstborn were killed. I was having this discussion with Eli, and Pharaoh was a firstborn, right?
That was the last plague, yeah.
And he asked Moses to bless him and then get out of Egypt, take your people and get out. And so Eli and I were talking, and he's saying, did Moses? I came to the deduction that Moses may not have come off his lips that he blessed him, but I think Hashem inadvertently blessed him because he didn't kill him. Is that a fair analysis?
Because I heard from a rabbi that Moses never blessed him, and there's no indication of blessing. And Jake was saying by Pharaoh admitting, that saying, bless me too, that was like a sign of humbleness. So right there, it's kind of like almost like Hashem decided to spare his life because of what he just said to Moses, even though Moses and Aaron never blessed him back when he asked to be blessed.
Interesting question, because at the end of the day it's not like that's the end of the story. That 3 days later he grabs his army and goes to chase the Jews and tries to run them into the sea. And
but for that particular blessing, Hashem spared his life, Rabbi.
No, Hashem did spare his life because at the end, Pari did become, I don't know if it's called a Baal Tshuva, but Pari did change. And later in history, he re-shows himself as the king of Nineveh. And because he experienced what happened in Egypt, he inspired the people of Nineveh, the story of that we read about Kippur, to do. So it's brought down that so he kind of he finally got it. Power is a very interesting character. He's not a simple character. It says there's a verse that says before the splitting of the Red Sea, Upariv Hikriv, that Pari made himself closer, which is not really a good way of using the language. It should have said that Pari got closer. What it means, he made himself closer. So he says it's brought down that he made the Jewish people closer to God. Aaron, I just muted you because you had some static coming over before. You're welcome.
Okay, I was eating, and my wife and daughter was up. Okay, I got a question for you. Because my wife is Sephardic, I learned they have a tradition that Passover matzah is only bread for Passover. We as Ashkenaz keep it all year as bread. So I want to know what makes bread and what makes not bread, because if it's the bread of the poor, matzah, it should always be bread. And why do they even consider it something else?
I'm not familiar with that statement.
So they make a motzi on matzah only on Passover.
I'm not familiar with that law. I would have to check into it. I find
okay, so I'm going to tell you what I know.
I find that hard. I find that hard to believe because it has the qualifications for a motzi.
Right, but afterwards they consider it a cracker.
Could be. Okay.
Not everyone knows everything. That's why we're Jewish.
No,
keep learning.
Exactly. I want to ask about the parsha that Hashem speaks to. The rabbi was saying on Shabbat that the whole parsha of the relation, that Hashem prohibited the Jews to do, because before they didn't have the Torah, they were going with the cousins, with the uncles, and that was like some sort of a new decree by Hashem, almost like another Ma'amad Ar Sinai. Was another like Hashem tells them, I am Hashem Elokechem. And then when he talks to Moses, he tells him, speak to Aaron, your brother. I just want to know what's the significance, because he never mentioned, is that because the Aaron's son died and he told Moshe, speak to Aaron Achicha, like he mentioned the word brother and he never mentioned it before. Is any significance to that?
Well, you guys have hard questions today. I don't, I don't know if that's the connection. I mean, he spoke to Aaron, his brother. That's the beginning of the parsha. If I think you're referring to that about the laws of Yom Kippur, the laws that you're referring to that talk about incest, etc., is at the end of the parsha. There's a part in between. It's not necessarily the same setting, but although it's in the same parsha. I'm not sure it's connected. It could be everything could be. It could be it's a connection, the mentioning brother relationship when they're talking about at the end of the parsha forbidden relationships. Maybe the message is that relationships have to be holy.
Right.
Rabbi, another on the plagues of Egypt. I was reading when Abraham went, there was a famine in the land when Abraham and Sarah went down to Egypt, and that balagan, that craziness that happened there, and he said, he was afraid. And anyway, that says that they were, Hashem put plagues on Egypt. Is that right?
I mean, not like they were plagued personally. It affected their bodily functions.
Oh, for just Pharaoh, just for Paro, or for all the people?
Well, actually, Rashi says that Sarah the angel came down, and Sarah was in charge. She said, hit him. Anyone, I guess, who messed with him. Sarah was kind of telling the angel guiding the angel where he should give a punishment.
So this is interesting because this must have been written down in the Egyptian nation's book somewhere. Watch out for these Jewish people. Their God is going to come down and plague us.
Excellent.
And I don't know how many, you know what I mean? It's like, and then years, I don't know, was it centuries later? I don't know how many years between Abraham and Moshe Rabbeinu.
Well, that story is the beginning of Avram's career in Israel. So Avram must have been about then 75, 76. So it's about the 400-year period, because the 400 years that the question is, when does the 400 years start? From Yitzchak's birth, from when Avram was 100. So it was about 400 years. The end of it. Moshe was 80 years old when they left Egypt. But what you're mentioning is a good point, and I'll tell you something. When Yehuda is facing Yosef, and he takes Binyamin, and Yehuda realized there's no more. The Jewish people can get messed around with. He threw Shimon in prison. He kept on putting their food back, getting their money back, asking weird questions, changing, what it was that he was saying, accusing them of being spies. They weren't spies. If you think about it, the brothers were putting up with a lot of harassment. They didn't do anything wrong. They came down like everyone else just to buy food. And the next thing they know, they were being accused of spying, of looking to conquer, all the kind of Yosef Atzadik was doing it as a way for kapara, but from their perspective, it was like a classic anti-Semitic situation, where the Jews are being blamed for seeing the things they didn't do. The Shimon was being kidnapped. Yaakov Avinu was going through torture for what's happening. And when they took Binyamin, that's it. Yehuda, that was it. Yehuda said, "That's it. We're not leaving with the situation continuing like this." And it says, Rashi says that when Yehuda faced Yosef, he told him that I will. If you remember, like you said, if you remember what happened when Paro messed with my great grandmother Sarah, so then they'll happen to you right now. So you better be careful, because it's happened before in Egypt where you messed with us, and the angel came and took vengeance.
Very good.
Stop messing with us. Yeah, that's what happened.
And that's what I say today. Stop messing with the Jewish people. It's going to be trouble.
Yeah, I mean, all these fake stories. I mean, that was Yosef Atzadik, but the idea is that from the perspective of the brothers, they were being messed around with, and he said, "Listen, if you have a short memory, last time you guys messed with our great grandmother, the angel came down and took your business."
Very good. Now, we have the four questions. We have the four nations. We have all these things in fours. Is there, why four? What is the significance of four? Four, what were the other four? There was a couple of others that are four. I can't remember all of them.
Yeah, the four languages of redemption. 4 languages of
Yeah.
redemption, 4 cups, the four
Four
mothers.
cups.
We have
Yes.
But wasn't there the fifth question that we don't say anymore?
that's for the 5th son. First of all, you're right. There was a 5th question back in the times of the temple. They talked about why do we eat the meat broiled or the way we eat the Korban Pesach and not the way we eat meat regularly. But today we have 4 questions and 4 cups. The number 4 is significant. It comes back.
And the 4 nations, the 4 different nations that are going to come after Israel.
This is in the dream of Daniel. Yeah, I mean, it's the Medes and there's like you said 4 or 5, but there's the 4 elements. The Rebbe explains, I mean, in Haggadah that we say that each plague was made up of 4 and there's an argument between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Akiva, I think. Rabbi Yossi, I think it's Rabbi Akiva for sure. If the plague was made up of 4 parts or 5 parts, meaning how deep did the plague penetrate Egypt? And the Rebbe has a whole talk that the 4 parts or the 5 parts represent the 4 elements. Everything is made up of Eish, Maim, Ruach, Afar, right? Water, fire, earth, and wind. Everything that exists in the world is made up. This is the Rambam. The Rambam talks about it in the first 8 chapters, that everything of God's creations is made up of 4 elements. And some have 2 elements. For instance, angels are just fire and wind. But a person, a tree, everything. So therefore, that's why when you burn a tree, what's the ash? The ash is the fire goes away, the water goes away, the wind goes away, and what's left is the dirt. So the question is, and everything, and the Rambam says, everything is made up of Eish, Mayim, Ruach, Afar. But the question is, how deep did the impurities of Egypt penetrate? So according to the first opinion was that it wasn't just on the surface, but it really penetrated all 4 elements. That's why we have the four parts of the plague, and that's why the 4 languages of Geula. Rabbi Akiva says that it penetrated even what's known as the Koach HaYuli. The Koach HaYuli is the unknown potential that decides why should 4 elements be a tree or other 4 elements be a rock, or it means there has to be something that dictates what's the outcome of the 4 elements of each thing, right? Why if you take 4 elements of fire, water, wind, and water, in one way you have a tree, or in another way you have a rock, and another way you have I don't know, something else. So therefore that's what's called the Koach HaYuli, the inner potential that creates that it should be this way. And Rabbi Akiva says that the depth of the impurities reach so deep, like today, what we see today, so deep that even beyond the 4 elements was impure and had to be purified and fixed.
Wow, very interesting.
So I want to know, Rabbi.
Eli, I just want to say one thing. This comes around many times. This is connected to the 400 men that came with David to fight Novel. This is the 400 coins that Ephron was paid for. The 400 comes around 400 years. This is all in the square.
Right.
This is connected to the 4 sides of the talus and the 4 sides of the Merkava, of the chariot of God.
Whoa.
Go ahead, Ali. What did you say?
I want to know, but during the holiday, like on Friday, and I know which Friday night was it. You're not allowed to say Elecha Dodi, right? You say it quietly, and you don't say Shir Hashirim, and you don't say when you bring the angels on Friday night.
Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem. You don't say it, right? So we were invited to some people, and the rabbi was saying, because you don't have to say it, because on Friday night usually you invite them, and nobody, because it's a holiday, they kind of like invite themselves. They just come like naturally. That's the reason.
So we say it quietly. We say the Shalom Aleichem quietly. It's on the Shabbos of Chol Hamoed, usually, or Shabbos of Yom Tif.
Right.
But that sounds like a good enough reason. We do a lot of.
What? Go ahead. Say it. You finish first.
So it's part of it's like there's a lot of things that we do that are meant to keep like modesty. For instance, we cover the bread so the bread shouldn't be embarrassed from the wine. So there's certain things that we do quietly. We don't announce. In Chabad we say the full Lechadodi. I know Sephardic and other customs they only say part of the Lechadodi. I think Ashkenaz. Go ahead.
What I was going to say
was that
our rabbi says we don't say everything because we don't want to overpower the holiday and make Shabbos bigger than the holiday.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's like I'm saying, the covering of the bread, the same idea. What did you say, Ali?
No, I'm saying that there is certain things that you don't have to invite, like the angels, that they can just, because it's a holiday, the notion of the holiday might come themselves without an invitation when you say, Shalom Aleichem. You don't have to actually say it in order to invite them. They just come in like to the house or whatever you are automatically. You don't have to actually say something in order to invite them and say Shalom Aleichem, like you would greet a person or greet an angel, so to say. Like,
Well, it could be connected to the law. The law brings down in the laws of Yom Tov that a person who like I don't not sure how to use the word, but a person who Yom Tov, you have to be happy. You have to be happy on the holidays. And so you have two kind of people. You have a kind of person who says, who's going to be happy? Me and my family. I don't have to worry about someone else's happiness. So the halacha says that a person on Yom Tov who only makes themselves happy, God doesn't like that, because on Yom Tov you have to make others happy as well. So therefore, it's a custom that we have guests on the holidays that other people should take joy. You can't just like close your tent and say, quickly everyone eat your meat, so no one else should take joy. So it could be that's connected to what you're saying, Ellie. So comes the holidays, the angels feel like it's a time of guests, and they come in their best suit and they show up.
Actually, there are Rabbi Pinchas Mikuritz. One time I heard a story that in Sukkot, everybody used to come to him, but I don't know, he was bothered by it. And he told Hashem, I don't want any guest of it. Take everybody away. And then he walked out of the sukkah and he saw Avraham Avinu. So why are you outside? He goes, you just chase everybody away, therefore I can't come in. So you have to pray again to get everybody in.
Yeah, we've told that story. Yeah, it's a time of guests. So v'samachta b'chagecha, you have to make others happy. That's why we say v'samachta with the oni, with the ger, to have, and telling you, it comes holiday, it's a time that we have to be happy and we have to be considerate of others, and that's why we raise funds for those others, at least, even if they're not going to come to our table, but at least they should have at their own table what to eat.
Right.
But this started with the Korban Pesach, because if you have more than you can eat, you're supposed to invite guests. If you're poor, you're supposed to go to your neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, Korban Pesach specifically, you have to be on the minyan. You have to be. It's not like just an open invitation. It's a calculator. You have to. I mean, they weren't eating. You have to remember, they weren't eating a ton of food. The Korban Pesach was, first of all, a lamb doesn't yield a lot of meat. I mean, obviously, one person can't eat a whole lamb, but a lamb doesn't yield a ton of meat. So you have a group of people. They would sometimes just have a little bit of a kazayis, a little small piece of meat that they would eat in the Korban Pesach, because they ate the chagiga first.
But you said some of the korbanot, you said that it has to be in Pesach, it's got to be like broiled and not like grilled like today's, that the way you eat meat today.
No, the Korban Pesach was very much. It had to be tzliesh. You couldn't boil it. You couldn't boil it in water. So much so that you couldn't even like, if they didn't use a metal spear. Let's say today, if you have a what do they call them when you put the what's it called?
Pit.
A pit.
Skewer.
Skewer. So if you have a skewer, right, you can't use the skewer for the Korban Pesach, because then the metal itself becomes hot, and the metal cooks the meat as opposed to the fire. So they had a special, I think the Rambam says they used pomegranate tree branch. So it was a branch that they had to use as the skewer, because the branch it doesn't get hot enough to cook. And so you weren't allowed to use metal. If the juices bounced, like let's say it touched the pit and it touched the wall and kind of cooked off the wall, that also had to be cut off. The laws of Passover were not easy. I mean, obviously they figured it out, so they did it, but it was a complex.
How tasty was the korban compared to today's taste? Could you say like 100 forward?
It's a lamb.
I'm sure
The best meat in town.
Exactly. I'm sure
it's not the same lamb you're eating today.
Why?
Nothing's
Obviously.
the same as. Okay, but let me ask you.
But one second, I'm asking the rabbi. 1 second.
I don't know.
I say how tasty. Well, okay.
I'm sure it was very tasty, but also you had to be very careful. You couldn't break the bones, so you had to eat it like there was a lot of laws. You're not allowed to break the bones. So a lamb, it's hard to carve a lamb when you can't touch the bones. I mean, you could touch them, you can't break them.
So let me ask you this. So I know this Hasidic couple. They're elderly. They're like my parents' age. But anyways, the story goes like this. So my wife's family, at the end, before you eat the last bit of matzah, you eat the egg, and then you eat some of the lamb, which when I first got married, I said, you can't eat roasted meats on Passover. And they said, no, we specially put it in liquid, so it's not roasted, so you can eat it. And then when I was talking to these people that I help out, she said, you can use lamb, you can use chicken, but we burn it so much that you wouldn't want to eat it. And we just toss it after the service. We don't touch it. And I don't understand. And so maybe you can give me some light on it. And they're Hasidic, so they say you burn whatever meat.
There's different custom. That's our custom also. For instance, we don't use lamb on the Seder plate. I use a chicken neck, and then we cook the chicken neck because the chicken neck has very little meat, and then we burn the chicken neck. So it should be. We want to make it. You have to be very careful with korban. You can't make it as if it's part of the korban. So there's those who are very careful to not just boil it, but to actually use chicken and then to burn all the meat off and take the meat off. The chicken neck that I put on my Seder plate is the meat is pulled off and the meat is burnt, and it's really but there is a custom to try to eat a little bit of it on the second day.
I want to know, Rabbi, like more spiritual, like when a person passes away, every angel, like we know that he creates every mitzvah that you do, you create an angel. So let's say a person comes after 120, he's got, let's say 50,000 angel, 100,000, right? He gets they send him to Gan Eden, right? What happened to those angels? Let's say they give him a house and all those angels serving him, or what happens to them? Are they disappear? Are they vanishing? I mean, what's the need for them anymore? I mean, they did their job. They did Nachat Ruach for Hashem. What happens to them? They're just walking around in Gan Eden?
It's a good question, but we know that there's the angels. It says there's tens of thousands of gedudim of regiments. So that we are in limited space, but angels in heaven there's no limited space. So
the gedudim in heaven, when they mention it, are they mentioning also all the person's mitzvot, all the angels that they created that's included with everything else?
There's not just one type of angel. There's all kind of angels. Again, the Rambam talked about this. Ishim, there's all types of angels. For instance, the angels that communicate with people are the lowest level of angels. There's many levels. It's not just like there's different creations. There's different types of angels. Not just jobs, but there are different level of physicality and spirituality. There are angels that are much more refined than others. There's the Srafim, there's certain angels that burn out the whole time. Is
there a finite number of angels, or are there an infinite number?
It says infinite. There's gedudim and gedudim of tens of thousands of angels. I mean, there's obviously a finite number because it's a creation. The only thing infinite.
So I guess what Eli, if I may piggyback on what he's asking, those that are not doing anything just are like dormant. They exist, but they're dormant until they get a job to do.
Now, first of all, they're not dormant. For instance, a lot of the angels that we create are hover around us. It says that God has the angels watching us wherever we go. I told you guys the story that in the early years of the Rebbe's leadership, the Rebbe was walking to synagogue. The Rebbe used to walk to the synagogue a lot. So the Rebbe was walking to the synagogue and he saw this woman who was expecting, late in her pregnancy, running after her son or her child that was falling down the steps. And that afternoon, the Rebbe called over her husband and said, "I saw your wife in her condition running and trying to catch the kid falling down the steps. In her condition, she shouldn't do that, and she shouldn't worry about the kid falling down the steps because God has angels around the children protecting them." So, I'm not going to get into the complication of difficult situations with children as well. Where are those angels at the time? But that's another question for another time. But they're always doing something. There's always doing something. Right where we're sitting now. We think we're sitting a few people having a schmooze. Who's listening in?
So let me ask you this. I'm going to change, if I may, change the subject for a little bit. We hear on the news everything. I feel blessed to have someone who lives in Israel. We can ask the question, what's going on in Israel today with all what's happening?
It's hard to say. We're not more knowledgeable than I mean,
No, I'm
again,
just asking you, like, we hear that they're throwing missiles, and are you safe? Are your kids safe? Is there, what do you see?
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, people were safe, but people are not safe. Right now, as we speak, they're fighting in Rafiach. I'm sure it's very dangerous for our soldiers. Our soldiers needed tefillah. The Chatufim who are being held captive. These are all. This is not a revealed good situation yet. God, everything will be revealed in its proper time. But as we stand now,
I heard today that I don't know how, if you've heard it on the news in Israel yet, about a ceasefire, and they're waiting for, Hamas is agreeing to it, but then they're adding stuff to it, and they're willing to give 33 hostages in return for 100 Palestinian criminals.
I don't know the details. But just again, it's not a political forum. But just to say quickly, what I understand is that the Hamas is manipulating the rhetoric to try to show as if that Israel's not, but they are accepting.
Manipulating.
They're changing. This is what it's like. I said, when Yosef and when Yosef's brothers came down, they were feeling hopeless. That's the Torah records their conversation, right? The Torah records that after Yosef leaves them. That's means Avram Avinu was the king. He was the father of all mankind. Although he faced a lot of challenges, but he called out the name of Hashem. He fought against the odds. He was never fearful. Avram was above and beyond. Wherever he went, they came out, they gave him gifts. When everyone came to Avram, everyone was at Avram's tent. When he made a party, everyone showed up. He was a fascinating personality the world never seen. And Yitzchak was kind of, he operated in his own way, but he was already having challenges with Avimelech. Then you have Yaakov, who struggled. He struggled with Esav, he struggled with Lavan, he struggled here and there. So we find as the Jewish people, but the first kind of really anti-Semitic feeling that the Jewish people, the Bnei Yaakov, were feeling were the tribes. The tribes were feeling, even when they went down to Egypt, and there was other times, the story of Shechem, that they were feeling to be singled out in an unfair way. And when the sons of Aaron are analyzing what was happening to them, so they didn't understand that it was Yosef. So Yosef was trying to bring them to tshuva. So Yosef was their brother. He was a tzaddik. But from their perspective, this was a situation where it didn't make sense to them. But now it doesn't make sense. Like, they're being singled out. Everyone else could come, show up with money, buy food, and go back home and mind their own business. The next thing they know, they're being arrested, they're being accused, they're being this, they're being that. So that kind of feeling is what's happening now. The Jewish people around the world, it's not just in Eretz Yisrael. I hate to say this, but in Eretz Yisrael, because people in America like to believe in Eretz Yisrael, they're suffering. Like you're saying, Aaron, we read the news from Eretz Yisrael, and I feel bad for the people in America. What's going on, the anti-Semitism that's being revealed, because at least I'm home. And I'm in the land of our land. This is our land. This is our place. So it's a challenge for Jewish people worldwide. Different challenges for different people and from different perspectives. And this is all hopefully, like the Rebbe said, this is obviously for sure the birth pains of Mashiach. But when you have birth pains, right? So the woman, it says that the woman has to bring a korban sacrifice after she gives birth. Why does she have to give a sacrifice after she gives birth? That was the law. A woman who gave birth had to bring a sacrifice. So one of the reasons is, until today, a woman who has a child goes to shul and she hears the Kaddish and the Kedusha. One of the reasons is because while she's giving birth, she has a lot of regrets from the pain of having the children. She makes promises that maybe she didn't really mean at the time. She says things that she didn't mean at the time, right? We get angry, we're in pain, we say things that we don't mean, right? We're upset, we're frustrated. So in order to wash away that kind of whatever happened during the childbirth, the woman does sacrifice afterwards. So same thing.
Is that considered an unintentional sin? When a woman...
It's not a sin. It's just like you gotta, when things are hard in our lives, right? What happens? We say things that we talk out of our frustration and out of our pain. And so sometimes, then afterwards, we're ashamed of it, right? Afterwards, Hashem shows us that this was just a test, or this was just a way for
I was under the impression that all sacrifices that take place when the Beit HaMikdash stood, and it will be standing, will be only for unintentional sins. So why does the woman have to bring an offering? If you're telling me it's not unintentional,
Oh, it is unintentional.
He didn't intend to say those bad things. That's what I mean.
Yes, she did. First of all, it's not a sin. It could be she made vows. Like, for instance, what happens if she said, I'm never having a child again, right? This is the last time I'm having a child. It's so painful. My point is, when I'm bringing it to our case over here, that the birth pains of Mashiach are difficult. And we're frustrated and we don't understand it. And it doesn't make sense to us. It doesn't make sense that Hamas could say whatever they want and the world reports it as facts. It's like not normal. I mean, if you think about it, it's not. It doesn't make sense. You have a people that did an atrocity not even 7 months ago, and if they make a statement, then it becomes a fact. If Israel says it, it's alleged. It doesn't. These things don't make sense.
I'll tell you.
Full speech during the day of the Holocaust, like Yom HaShoah. He gave a wonderful speech. He said that, to all the nations, Israel stands alone. If they have to stand by themselves, they're going to stand by themselves. So that was a big. People said.
I'm
going to tell you what I always bring up my rabbi because I don't know why. But he said, if you ever ask him any questions, should I send my kids to Israel? Should I go to Israel? Whatever. He said, you're probably safer in Israel than in New York City. And you're closer to Hashem, so he'll protect you even better.
Listen, the Rebbe always said, when the Rebbe said clearly in 1991 when there was the Iraq threat, that Eretz Yisrael is the safest place. Never said that's differently. Listen, Eretz Yisrael is the safest place. But we need brachas and we need Yeshuas and we need a Yeshua from almost from ourselves. Even last night. Again, I know we want to talk Torah in this form, but only positive things. But even last night, outside our house, people, every time Hamas says something, then the people who are protesting make it as if that's the best solution instead of maybe supporting their own country and understanding that you can't just give every time you say now, and every time you say it's like negotiating upwards. Who negotiates like that? You're not giving. There's no incentive for Hamas to even give the hostages back. They're always waiting for a better deal. It's just there's no logic. It's a frustrating situation. But again, we want to talk positive. This is the Parsha of Kedoshim. All the Jewish people are holy, and there's a lot of frustration. So there's a lot of people that are frustrated. You can't blame someone whose child is being held captive in a horrible situation. Pidyon Shvuim is a big mitzvah. But the laws of Rambam says, halachically, you have to be careful about the precedent you set. Like we spoke about the story of Maram Rottenberg. He was held captive, but he refused to let them bail him out because the price wouldn't be worth. It would set a precedent that every time you want something, just take a Jew and hold him captive.
That's what I said about Gilad Shalit. He should have had. It's of course it's a sin to hurt yourself, but if you knew about the deal, if you should have really stay alive or just, but I don't know the story.
These are we can't judge anyone, Chas v'shalom.
I'm not judging him. Rabbi, I heard somebody asked a rabbi this week, and he said, first time I heard it, that even though it says about the Beit Knesset all over the world that they're going to merge in when Mashiach comes into the Beit HaMikdash, it's because the stones of Beit HaMikdash will like spread out throughout the world. And every time you see a shul, whether it's in a house or a basement or anywhere, there is a shul, that stone from Beit HaMikdash was actually there. Now the question is, if somebody is moving from one place to next one, let's say somebody made like a little nice shul in the house and then got some more money and he moved to another block to make a bigger shul. That place that he was first shul has to be a shul or not necessarily?
Well, you have to, it's not simple. There's halachic ways one's allowed to sell a shul or it's not. There's an expression called Ma'alim B'Kodesh. Once something becomes holy, we only elevate it. We don't go down. Lo Yeridim, we don't go down. So but the halacha goes into scenarios where if you're going to use the money right away to build another shul, it's a halacha. You have to learn. We learn in the Shulchan Aruch the laws of when a person could sell a shul. In history, it's not. First of all, sometimes it wasn't by choice. When the Jewish people left today, you have plenty of beautiful synagogues, especially in Toledo, Spain, that were synagogues that today are churches. The church, but that wasn't by choice. But you have even in Brooklyn. You have in Brooklyn, New York, where the Jewish people left certain areas that they didn't want to live in anymore, that you look at them, you see, on the way from 770, you could see, I don't know what it turned into, but you see the Star of David. Even in Seattle, you see the Star of David in certain buildings that were once synagogues that the Jewish people knew.
But this is funny, because where my wife was in Syria, she said, because the people took videos. So some of the people's houses turned into hotels, but they won't touch the shul. They'll leave it all dusty. They're not going to clean it, but they will not destroy it, even though they want to destroy the Jews.
Yeah, because some people have respect for religious places. And listen, there's a lot of laws. It's a good question you ask, Ellie. I don't know the answer to that. It could be that it will come, it could be it won't come. There's, you know, by about the tradition of the stones. Obviously, it's not talking about physical stones; it's a concept. But but actually, there's an opinion of the Alt Nishul in Prague. Now, everyone knows the Alt Nishul in Prague. In the city of Prague, there's the shul of the Maharal, where officially where the golem is buried on the top. It's the Alt Nishul. Even the Nazis didn't touch that shul. They didn't touch the old quarter of Prague. They wanted to keep it. They had their own reasons, but it's obviously that's Hashem protected the old city of the Alt Nishul, and also they protected the cemetery of the Maharal right outside. I was there, right outside the Alt Nishul is now the Alt Nishul. We don't know. Alt Nai means either Yiddish or Hebrew. Alt Nai in Hebrew means on condition, or Al T'nai in Hebrew means in condition, and Al T'nai in Yiddish means old new. So the old new means that they had an old shul and they renewed it also probably 500-700 years ago, but it was even older before, and that's why it's called the Al T'nai shul. If you go into the Al T'nai shul, it's a fascinating shul. There's a little prison where the rabbi would keep people who misbehaved. Now, the one of the reasons why it's called the Al T'nai shul, according to one opinion, is that he actually brought stones, if I'm not mistaken, from the first temple. It means the Jewish people moved to Prague in the time of the destruction of the first temple, and they brought stones from the first temple, and part of the stones of the Al T'nai shul are from the temple itself, and they made it t'nai, they made a condition that when Mashiach comes, they're going to bring the stones back. That's why it's called the conditional shul. And it's the tradition is, the Rebbe says this clearly, that in the shul, they have a Sefer Torah that was written by Ezra the scribe. So we're talking about Ezra the scribe, built the second temple, and that's in the Marahal shul, and it's always kept rolled up to the Shema Yisrael, and so it's a very, very holy shul. But there clearly we have there's the opinions that they have stones from the Beis Hamikdash.
Wow. The whole thing with the angel we spoke about yesterday, I remember maybe 30 years ago when I was in Israel, I used to go to all different seminars to hear rabbi speaks from different states in Israel. And one rabbi, he came from around, from my neighborhood, and he said there was a guy that always gives tzedakah, like no matter what, he never said no. He gave here, he gave then. Every time he wants something, he never says no. And he said one time he saw it with his own eyes. He had two kids, they have like, I remember, a third or fourth floor from the balcony. For some reason, the kids were like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years old. They managed to like literally fall off the rail. And he said he saw it with his own eyes. They were standing like still on the air, like an angel, held them, and then brought them back to the, after that. It was unbelievable. Just want to say, we're talking about, the angels.
Yeah. Hopefully the angels need some work. They have some work cut out for them now. We have some hostages that they need to go find and bring them home. Their sons come, but the thing is that if in all the prophecies about Mashiach, it says we talk about the hostages. We say, what do we say? Tzion b'mashbet pada v'shaveha, and its captives b'tzedakah. So in back in the days, there was always Jewish people being held captive, and up until recently, there wasn't really. It was a concept. It was the held captive by spirituality, but now we see that the prophet was talking about physical hostages being held captive. How do we redeem our hostages? Is through charity.
Is any certain prayer that we can say in the healing to make them get free and destroy the enemy? Is there anything that?
Well, the rabbis have put out different. The chief rabbis have put out different chapters that we say for the Yeshua, for the salvation, and you could dedicate learning Torah. We could dedicate the tzedakah charity. The prophet says clearly, right? Tzion b'mishpat tepadeh v'shaveh b'tzedakah. It's returnees, or it's captives with tzedakah.
But I'll tell you this. Okay, so 10 weeks they had a thing to show you what happened at the dance festival, and then they moved it to New York for 4 weeks. So on the Sunday before the second set of holidays, I went to see it, and besides all the bad things you saw, there was somebody who was a survivor actually there, live, and then there was people in videos that told their stories. And the one thing that they said was that kept them alive was they were told, the ones who knew did it, and the ones who didn't know were told to do it, say Shema Yisrael over and over and over, and they survived. A lot of these people. So I'm just saying, keep saying Shema.
Yeah, Shema Yisrael.
I saw a video on YouTube today about an Israeli guy. He was in the shul. Actually, he took down his tefillin. I mean, after he was praying, and he was telling the people that he was he's like he's a driver. He works in a bakery, and he always have like tons of bread left over. And he goes all the way like to Nebrak, and he gives the bread left over, whatever he has left, instead to throw it in the garbage. He gives it to this guy, this religious guy, like for years. He has like 8-10 kids. He gives it to him. And after 5 years, he said, just before 1 week or 2 weeks before this thing happened, with October 7th, he calls him at 5 o'clock in the morning, the same Chasidus guy. He calls him at 5 o'clock in the morning, said, listen, I had a dream about you, that people are shooting you. The enemy, they're shooting at you, but the only thing that's going to save you is the mitzvah that you're doing for me and my family. And exactly what happened. He was in that Nova party, and the same thing happened, but he was saved. He said his friends died in front of him, and he was saved, and he believed that only that mitzvah, giving bread to that family, saved his life.
That's a famous story of Rabbi Kiva's daughter. Rabbi Kiva's daughter got on the day of her wedding. Rabbi Kiva saw in his spiritual realms that his daughter would die on the day of her wedding, and she didn't. And what happened was she gave tzedakah, and that's what Rabbi Kiva says, tzedakah matzah mimavis, that she was supposed to be bitten by a snake, and that she had a pin in her ear. So those days they had big pins, she had a pin in her ear, and she wanted to take it off, so she stuck it into the wall. But when she stuck it into the wall, she killed the snake that was supposed to kill her. The pin pierced the head of the snake. So it says that from there, Rabbi Kiva says, yeah, sure, it's a tradition we have from the Talmud, from Rabbi Kiva.
Was that sentence from that incident, or there was that?
He quoted it. He quoted tzedakah tatzmi mavis. That tzedakah saves a person from death.
Right.
That there's many times it's brought down in stories that people tzedakah is a tremendous kindness. When you have tremendous kindness of God doesn't forget it. And I'm not saying that we don't understand everything, the big picture. We don't understand why some people things happen, some people don't happen. But it says clearly the story from Rabbi Kiva. He said tzedakah saves your life. It means from the perspective of what Rabbi Kiva saw in the higher world, she wasn't supposed to survive, but tzedakah overrided the system. There's an override.
Right. So, Rabbi, before you go, I just want to say that the people that are considered Chasidei Umot HaOlam, like Schindler's List, for instance, right? That they have a special place in heaven, obviously. But what makes them what makes them Chasidei Umot HaOlam? What makes them? Is it like one act of kindness, or they have to go follow the 7 laws of Noah? I mean, what makes them Chasidei Umot HaOlam?
It's a good question. The Rambam addresses it, and he says clearly, the Chasidus Schmooze.
What does that mean? What is the English of what Eli just said?
So we'll translate the word Chasidut means the kind people of the nations. Chasidus Schmooze.
Okay.
Of the
not righteous Gentiles.
It is righteous Gentiles. That's righteous. Okay. Gentiles. So Chasidus Schmooze is the righteous Gentiles. So the Rambam qualifies that when he talks about in Hilchos Tshuva, in the laws of repentance, when he talks, that's the 2 places the Rambam talks about Mashiach, at least, I mean, with more details, not just mentioning, a blessing from Mashiach, but the details, the laws of what's going to happen in the days of Mashiach, is in the laws of Tshuva and the laws of the kings, the end of Rambam. So we just learned now, those who study Rambam, we learned the laws of Tshuva. He talks about what's going to happen when Mashiach comes, and over there he talks about the Chasidei Umot HaOlam, the righteous Gentiles, and he says that the definition of a righteous Gentile has to be that they keep the 7 Noahide laws, not just because it makes sense, but because God told Moshe and Har Sinai that's what the nations have to do. That's how that's what the Rambam defines. It means they have to keep it not because that's what they want to do, or because that's what makes sense for them to, because that's what God told Moshe at Har Sinai. When God spoke to Moshe and Har Sinai, he gave the Torah. So he gave a path of connection for all mankind. The Jewish people have the Torah and the 613 laws with all their studies, and the Gentiles were given the 7 Noahide laws again. And then they had it so that they have to, the Rambam says they have to do it, they have to keep it. That's much more challenging to tell someone they have to keep the 7 Noahide laws. You could that you could argue, but you have to, if you tell them that you have to keep it because God told Moses, that's a taller order. I'm not saying it's a
The Schindler's List, even though a lot of people, a lot of Jews around the world would consider him Chasid Umot HaOlam, I mean, maybe he didn't really keep the 7 laws. He still he has a portion in heaven because he saved a lot of Jews.
There's chusim, you know what chusim is? There's merits. A person who saves a person who saves people, even if it's unintentional, you know, it says about the laws of tzedakah, that if you drop money on the floor, by mistake, money falls out of your pocket, and a poor man finds it or a woman finds it and buys something to eat. So even though you even have possibly regrets, or you don't even know that you lost the money, you still get the merit of the charity. Same thing over here. Even if his intentions were selfish, hypothetically, I'm not sure, not going into the movie or all that, but if it doesn't make a difference. He saved lives.
So if
So
you lose money, like let's say $20, let's say, and you don't know where it is, and you say, you get upset over it. You shouldn't, because you might say that Hashem kind of took your 20 and brought it to the right person, hopefully, and you'll get the merit out of it.
hopefully, sometimes someone else finds it and buys himself a beer. I don't know, but I'm not saying that's. But I'm saying it's either way. It's not going to help you to get upset about it. It's not going to get it back to you.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
when was the last time you visited Pinchas Azuz?
I saw Pinchas Azuz before Pesach. I spoke to him though.
Okay. Will you be seeing him? Because I know he's not, he's having his challenges. And so if you could send a refuah shalama from Jake to him, Jake Solomon Spitzbart, I'd appreciate it.
I will.
Can you just give us a little insight onto who this guy is, Pinchas?
Yes, Pinchas. First of all, Pinchas is a good friend of ours from Seattle. He's going through recovery from cancer that he's been suffering from the past few years. Also a supporter of our classes, so we're very thankful to Pinchas. A very good Jew, mamish, a person of chesed. He helps a lot of people in Eretz Yisrael and outside with people that needs, and he needs a refuah shalema. So we bless him for a refuah shalema.
Amen.
Very important regarding Pinchas, because sometimes when I have some couple of minutes, I listen to different rabbis from YouTube. So Rabbi Rafael Abuchatzera, he told the story. I don't remember the story, but in the end, there was a story that he says it's a segula. If the person, let's say in his case, he's got to weigh himself. Let's say he's like 190 or 200 pounds, right? He's got to weigh himself, and the money of that weight, if he can buy meat and give it to the yeshiva, okay? In his marriage, they should have a refuah shlema. I mean, hopefully, I'm not sure, but if you can mention that.
It's an interesting suggestion, and nothing, and it's a good thing to do all around. At the end of the day, is you're giving charity, and at the end of the day, is people have Baruch Hashem meat.
If you want to mention it that I said it, like if you can do that,
I'll mention from Eli, and I'll mention from Jack Solomon Spitzbart and everyone else we're wishing him a refuah shalema.
Amen.
Evra, Laila Tov. A good Chodesh, tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh, Laila Tov, a good Chodesh, and the Jewish people should be safe. Take care.
Amen.
Amen.